7. It starts with a mimer, which is really short. Maybe we'll just try and jump into this little mimer here. It says, "Vasisa mizbeach machtir ketores." You should make an altar for the ketores, for the incense. And it says, "Miskater b'ketores ein ksiv kan ela maktir ketores." It doesn't say miskater. It doesn't say in the reflective that it should be burnt ketores on it, but maktir ketores means you should burn ketores. Meaning it should burn ketores. Meaning the mizbeach was itself burning ketores. It doesn't mean it reflects that it was burnt on it. It means the altar burnt the ketores, like it was a verb applying to the altar. You understand?
It was alive.
The altar burnt the ketores, meaning to say that the mizbeach itself, the altar itself, was burning the ketores without help from the fire that you put on it, but rather from the fire from above is how it was burnt. This is coming from the Shalmi there.
No maintenance.
Yeah, no maintenance.
Moshes.
From this reason, that's why the golden covering of the altar was not burned by the fire that was put on it. Ki eish shel mayla eina mechala, because godly fire from above does not destroy things. As it says in the Medrash that Moshe was surprised. He says when Moshe looked at the construction of the Mizbeach, he said, it's impossible, you're going to burn all this on here, and it's not going to burn through the gold and burn the wood that's underneath. And Hashem said to him, that's my way of fire from above. Eish ochla eish, ve'ena mechala. It's a fire that eats other fire and it doesn't destroy anything. We have to understand what's this greatness about a fire from above. That dafka it was maktir sakatoris. It's what burned the ketoris. Dehine inyanu shel beisa ishos. These two fires, the one from below and the one from above, when it comes to spiritually in your service to Hashem, it represents an arousal from below and arousal from above. That's what means the fire from below, fire from above. And the whole idea of the Mishkan and the Mikdash is that there should be specifically avoda from below, right? That man should do something. As it says, "V'asu li mikdash v'shachanti b'sochem." As it says, "Make me a mikdash and I'll dwell within you." The whole idea is make me a mikdash in order for me to dwell within you. You have to do something. That the whole resting of the Shekhinah v'shachanti b'sochem only happens when v'asu, you will make. And so it is with the karbanos themselves, the sacrifices, which was the main, feature of the Mishkan. The whole idea was avoda from below specifically, as explained in Basi Lagani, like we learned so many times. The whole idea of turning your animal soul from shtus to kedusha and sort of like sacrificing yourself, is what it's all about. As it says in all the different sacrifices, reach nichoach, it calls the sacrifices a pleasing scent. And this Chazal said nachas ruach instead of reach nichoach. They called it nachas ruach, like a satisfaction before me that I spoke and you did my will. It's all about your performing for me, which means that the whole nachas ruach, the whole pleasantness from Hashem's part, is in this, that His will was done by the man down below. And if so, what's so great about this Ketores, that it burns itself, so to speak, from a fire from above? It's like kind of goes against the rule of the Beis HaMikdash in general, that it's supposed to be from below. Everyone understands? Okay. So it says in the Zohar that the menorah, Sheva Butzinin delay, its 7 candles represent the 7 maidens Haruyos L'Seslam Beis HaMelech that were given to Esther when she went into the house of Achashverosh. Basically, you didn't just go to Achashverosh by yourself; you went with like maidens, and they determined that she was given 7 maidens to go with her.
Are we talking about the menorah that was around the time of the Mishkan?
Yeah, the menorah.
So we can try that out of sequence. menorah existed before these maidens.
It's true, but they represent each other. In other words, everything in Torah is eternal. So Esther, there's a verse in Torah that the Gemara looks to when it wants to say where's Esther's root from? Like where's her source? And it says that it finds a verse in the Torah, Bayumahu Hastir Panai. On that day I will conceal my face. So that word Haster is like the source of the word Esther. It came thousands of years before Esther was even born in reality. Because everything in Torah is basically like sitting there in potential, waiting to come out at the right time in history. So really, these connections are made. There's all kinds of hints to Hanukkah in the Torah itself. And things like that. So, good question for sure, but this is like something that we're making these kinds of connections. So it says these these 7 maidens, we decided we're going to do something else today because we didn't have a big crowd. These 7 maidens represent the 7 lights of the menorah. Mitaman ve'elach v'asisa mizbach maktir k'turas. The Zohar goes on to say, from there and on, you shall make this altar to maktir k'turas, like we said before. In other words, it juxtaposes the two things. The menorah is the 7 maidens, and from there and on, make this incense offering. Hainu. That means to say that the 7 candles of the menorah, which are these 7 maidens, this is an arousal from above, excuse me, that's drawn through an arousal from below, and this is the 7 maidens that were fit to be giving her the seislam, basically to give her from the house of the king. That even shen baos mi beis hamelech, even though they come from the house of the king, which is basically an arousal from above. The 7 branches of the menorah are these 7 maidens which are given to her from the house of the king. They were coming from above. It says that the actual pasuk in the Megillah is that there's 7 maidens haruyos l'seis that are fit to give her from the house of the king. So the fact that you say that they're fit to give her from the house of the king means she did something praiseworthy to get them. So even though they represent 7 maidens from the house of the king, which is from above, because she was fitting for them, that's why she got them. So there is an arousal from below that triggered that. Not so when it comes to the altar. It's an arousal from above all by itself, which has no previous arousal from below. And why not? Because there's no arousal from below that can reach that high. So basically in the Zohar, once again, it basically juxtaposes the menorah to the altar, the golden altar, and the menorah, it likens it to the 7 maidens, which are a gift from above, but because she was fit to have them, it represents the idea that we got that because of something we did. From there it goes to the altar, where it's all from above, because it's indicating a level so high that it's too high to reach from anything that we could ever do down here. So we're going on with his previous theme, that this is something which is entirely from above, the altar. And the idea behind all this is that these 2 altars, the outer altar and the inner altar. The outer altar was the one where they offered the animal sacrifices. The inner altar was where they offered the incense. In a person, they represent the outer part of the heart and the inner part of the heart. 2 levels of the heart. As it says, V'yached levavenu, like we say in davening, may you join our hearts with, and it says hearts with 2 vases, levavenu instead of libenu, which is showing that there's 2 hearts, and we're trying to join our hearts. Hainu shetzrich liyached beis halavavos. You have to join your 2 hearts together, the external and the inner. And the main finalization of this work comes from the inner dimension of the heart. And it comes through the hamshacha of a level of an arousal from above specifically. In other words, when you're going to finalize the work and you're going to get to the point of joining your hearts, the completion will come from the fact that you join up your inner part of your heart, and that comes from something which is purely from above. Like the golden altar, which we said is completely above. And the idea behind it is that the purpose of avoda is to effect a joining together of Kucha Brichu Ushchinte, of Hashem and His Shechina. And therefore, before every single mitzvah we say it once a day, and we have in mind for all the mitzvahs of the day, the Shem Yichud Kucha Brichu Ushchinte, the Yachadab Shem Yudke Bevavke. Right? We basically start off our day before we say Baruch Shamar, the first real bracha mitzvah that we're going to do. We say L'Shem Yichud Kucha Brichu Ushchinte. This is for the sake of joining Kucha Brichu, one dimension of Hashem, which is like sort of higher, and Shechinte, the level of the Shechina, they should be joined together. That's the purpose of all of our work. And the shleimus of this yichud, the perfection of this joining, which is basically represented by the Pnimius Alev, the inner matter, the inner dimension of the heart. This is accomplished through a drawing down of something from above, that it comes all by itself. Okay, so basically it's like sort of throwing a lot of terminology around here, but in general, what does it mean, Yichud, Kucha Brichu, Shechinte? It's basically the idea of the infinite Hashem, joining with the level of the finite world. You join these two levels together. And this is similarly the idea of the inner heart and the outer heart. The outer heart is like sort of a limited level of emotion that you derive from your intellect. And therefore it's by definition limited because your intellect is limited. However much you'll think or how long you'll think for, that's how much your emotions can get aroused. But obviously it's limited by human effort. But then there's like a response to that can come from above, which is the inner level of the heart, which is sort of the essence of the soul kind of can come out. And that is that's the real unity, so to speak, of these two things. And that happens, what he's saying is like, as much effort as you'll do, you'll never do enough to quite be able to accomplish that. But whatever effort you do, that could come as like a free gift in response to what you've put forward. Similar to what we say when we count the Omer. We only count 49 days, and the big payoff is the 50th gate. Why don't we count 50 days? Because the 50th gate is uncountable. We can't actually count it. By counting it means you're accomplishing something which is, according to that level, you can access. It's a level beyond our access. So we can't count it. But if we count 49, then the 50th will come to us from Hashem from a free gift. Saying a similar thing here, basically. You're doing the work that you can do from the bottom, which is basically the menorah. You do what you can, and then you're given, like reciprocally, what is available to be received, which is the 7 branches of the menorah. And then the delivery of the incense offering happens as like a free gift. And then he's basically relating that this is also the notion of the work that you do with the two different altars. One is sort of the work that you can accomplish on your own. What's the idea of the work of the outer altar? The outer altar, the outer part of the heart. Putting animals on there, sacrificing yourself, doing the work on your own. That's something, the outer altar is about taking basically physicality and elevating it to Hashem. You put animals, you put plants, you put inanimate objects on this thing and you turn them into something divine. That's something that man can do. If you do that, so to speak, enough and try and unite Hashem from a human perspective as much as is possible, so the reward for that is that you access the inner dimension of the heart, and that comes from Him alone. Okay, but we still have to understand, seemingly there's a contradiction to what we said, that through every mitzvah you can unite Kucha Brichu Ushchinte, the Hashem and His Shechina. Where's the contradiction from what it says in the Zohar in Parshas Truma, where it says Gansa lo al be hahu ganana. Shebizman hagalos lo nimtza yichud. So he says basically, that the garden is not able to bring up its produce from that gardener. In the time of Gullus, in other words, like a code term for that. In the time of Gullus, this yichud, where you're able to like sort of sprout the fruits and see the glory and the revelation of Hashem, the garden is the idea of sort of like working the ground and bringing forth, the revelation. So it says the gardener can't do it in this time of Gullus. You can't find this yichud. So to understand this, we have to preface first with the statement of the Tzemach Tzedek, who speaks about this piece of Zohar. And this is a quote from the Tzemach Tzedek. He says, "Lahayir sheb'maimer zeh." Oh wait, zeh lashono. Oh, don't tell me this. I keep getting into this problem with you guys. He said he doesn't bring the quote from the Tzemach Tzedek. It did not make it to print. Okay, so there's some kind of a massive quote from the Tzemach Tzedek which we do not have. Sorry. Then there's the continuation of the mimer. No wonder it's so short. We don't have the whole mimer.
Oh.
Sorry about that. We got suckered. Anyway, it's a short mimer. We'll do what we can. It's like 2 more paragraphs. So he says to understand that in this mimer, it explains the inyan of the 7th of Adar. That in Ashana Mu'beres, which in a leap year, the 7th of Adar, which is Moshe's birthday and his yurtzeit, is in the first month. So. And it says, Lama b'petiras Moshe Rabbeinu alav shalom hu tainis b'zayin Adar. Why is there a fast on Zayin Adar? Even though it's also a time of Simcha, as we find in the Gemara, that when Moshe that it says, Amar Kemoshe b'shiv ba'adar mai de biyom hivaldo samchu simcha gedola. Biyom moso mistama rabim naddu b'neder machmas tsar v'lechein hashela mai kavanaso ba'amar Kemoshe b'shiv ba'adar kiyom moso v'nezirus kabalale o kiyom hivaldo kamar v'simcha kabale. So basically, in the Gemara, not in the Gemara, I don't know where it is. It's in the Halacha. It's brought in Shulchan Aruch that it says, why do we fast on Zayin Adar? Is the question. We don't technically fast today, but there's a minhag throughout the generations to fast. And we say, even though Zayin Adar is a day of Simcha, right? So why do we fast? So the question is that Zayin Adar, what's the story with it? Is it that the day of his birth gives us a reason to rejoice? And the day of his passing sort of undoes that and makes people want to like make a neder and take like pains upon themselves because of the pain of losing Moshe Rabbeinu. And therefore the question is, what do we do with Moshe's birthday on Zayin Adar? Since it's his yurtzeit, do we hold back and we fast on it, or because it's his birthday, are we rejoiceful on it? And therefore the Gemara says, Kevin Shanafal Pur B'Chodesh Adar Samach Haman Simcha Gedola. In the Gemara says, since Haman's lottery fell in the time of Adar, Haman rejoiced greatly because he hopped onto the fact that it was Moshe Rabbeinu's yurtzeit and it was like a day suited for calamity, and therefore he was happy that his lucky guess fell in that month. He said it fell for me in the month that Moshe died. But what he didn't know that Moshe died on that day, Moshe was also born on that day, the same day. And Rashi says the birth is enough to atone for the death. Right? So therefore it should be that it's a happy day because the birth overrides the death. Nonetheless, the din of the Shulchan Aruch is that on the 7th of Adar we do fast. Now, that being said, why do we fast on Moshe's yurtzeit? In other words, we fast because it's a yurtzeit. If it were his birthday, theoretically we would have rejoiced. But the yurtzeit seemingly like takes precedence in halacha, and the whole question is, what about the Rashbi? On his yurtzeit, we rejoice, and it's the biggest day of simcha in the whole year. So basically, I feel like there's a heck of a lot of missing from this mimer, but that's suddenly a question that we have to ask ourselves. So he says, and this is the last os. We'll just see what he says. How we get out of this with. He says. This is also the meaning of the words Va'ata Tetzaveh from our coming parsha. Dehine Va'ata hainu vav ata. So the word v'ata tetzaveh is v'ata, vav and then ata. Ata is the level of malchus. Ata means malchus, and this that it says v'ata with a vav. That's the idea of joining the Or Ein Sof into malchus. V'ata, the vav is like drawing something down into ata, which is malchus, and that's what it means v'ata tetzaveh. Lashon tzaveh v'chibur, as we said in our mimer. That's why it says ata v'ata tetzaveh. The word tetzaveh means to join together, which is the idea of fusing together za and nukva, right? Basically the 6 midos with malchus, and that's another name for yichud kucha brichu ushchinte. You know, the whole idea of what we were saying before, like the divine elements which are above the world fusing with the world, is the idea of Kutchabrichu ushchinte, which we say before we make any mitzvah. And he's trying to say that this is the whole idea of v'ata. Vav is coming from above, joining the infinite light, to ata, which is malchus, and that's why it says tetzaveh suddenly. There's a joining together of these two impossible lights, kutchabrichu ushchinte. And the main amshacha of this yichud happens on the inner altar, which is the Panimius Halev, the inner heart factor of the heart. And this is the reason why the commandment on the golden altar comes at the end of Parshas V'ata Tetzaveh. Right? We have all these different commandments in our like to make the shulchan, to make the ark. We don't have the commandment to make the inner altar until next week's parsha, because the ultimate, and it's the last thing basically that we're commanded on, because the ultimate connection of Kutchabrichu Shchinte is accomplished by this inner altar, and therefore it's at the end of all the commandments to make all the different implements. It comes at the end because it's the finalizing of what the whole Mishkan is about, which is there to like fuse godliness into the world. And this yichud of the inner altar is accomplished by the fire from above, as we said, an arousal from above which is not dependent on our arousal from below. And this is the reason why the commandment of the inner altar comes after the commandment of all the Mishkan and all of its vessels. It's the very last thing, because the ultimate making of the Mishkan, the ultimate purpose of the Mishkan, which is V'shachanti b'sochem, I will dwell within you, is and does take place through something which happens from above. In other words, the whole point is, you can build me a Mishkan, but the real reason of it is because Hashem is going to, on His own initiative, come down in there and like do the impossible. There's nothing you can really do to make Hashem's join infinite to finite. All you can do is prepare the finite as much as Hashem deems necessary, and then He'll come into it if you prepare the vessel properly. But it's not like you're drawing Him down, like you're pulling the strings. There's no strings you can pull. So the ultimate purpose of making the Mishkan is for this to happen, this fire from above, and that's the whole idea of the inner altar, and therefore it comes last. But the beginning, there needs to be a commandment of all the other vessels of the Mishkan, because all that is the arousal from below, and only through that, preparing the vessel, and the subsequent arousal from above that is a result of that, which there's two arousals from above. There's the arousal from below, which you are pulling the strings, and you do pull some things down. That's a level of divinity which is relevant to your work. It's something like, as so to speak, part of the Seder Ishtalshlus, like Hashem says, you do good, I'll give you this. You do bad, I won't give you this. There is a game of that your work is recognized and rewarded, and you do have access to the divine by doing mitzvahs, but that's only one level. And so you have to basically fulfill all that in perfection, the level of divinity which is accessible to you. And if you do all that in perfection, you make the vessels and the Mishkan and everything that you're supposed to do, and sort of arrive at the first level of divinity, then Hashem will come with this inner altar, like that which in Avodas Hashem is like the inwardness of your heart, this infinite level of your soul will sort of emerge as a result of that. Because Hashem won't dwell on a place which is not whole. So you have to make, that's what we were saying before, you have to sort of prepare it and make the whole thing whole before He'll grant you that. And that's also why they had to bring coals from the outer altar and put them on the inner altar in order to burn the incense, even though we just got through saying it's not really coming from that lower fire. But it had to be like, you have to sort of bring like your your produce from like all the work that you did and stick it on the inner altar to show that I've done everything I can do. Maybe that's what the Rebbe means. I've done everything I can do. We finished our job down here. First, you need to do the arousal from below, and then only then can you have this arousal from above, which is beyond any arousal from below. And this is the ultimate concept of the Mishkan, V'shachanti B'socha. Okay, Chaim. Let's go for the Sikha that followed that. It's interesting, but we're missing some things there. So he says we spoke about in the Mimer something which was based on the Tzemach Tzedek, that was the part that we didn't get. He says regarding the Psak Din in the Gemara regarding fasting on the Zayin Adar, that in a leap year that fast is supposed to take place this coming week, right? Today's what, the 3rd? 4 days from now, theoretically, Al Pi Shulchan Aruch, you're supposed to fast on Zayin Adar. We also spoke about well, we didn't in the Mimer that we had, but apparently he did. Spoke about the difference between Zayin Adar and Lag BaOmer. That regarding Zayin Adar, it says in the Shulchan Aruch there needs to be a fast. But on Lag BaOmer, which is the same idea, the passing of the Rashbi, it's a day of tremendous simcha. And it's not just the day of the simcha for the Rashbi, but it's a simcha for all of Klal Yisrael. It's called Yom Simcha